Yo, what is up guys? Del Boy here. So Michael Conlan stops Diego Alberto Ruiz in 9 rounds in what was a one-sided fight. Diego Alberto Ruiz, he never really showed any ambition in this fight whatsoever. He basically was in there to try to survive. Very little offense, very little aggression, and he basically had no success in this fight. Well, no success of any note anyway. And yeah, he was the typical late replacement type fighter, in there for a payday and trying to survive. And sometimes when you are in there with those type of opponents, it's hard to look good, and I think that was the case tonight with Michael Conlan. Don't get me wrong, Conlan won every round and he was always in control, but it wasn't really very inspiring. He rarely went through the gears and he didn't really look that dynamic. And I've got to say, I didn't really see much there that would indicate he can beat any of the champions at featherweight. I just don't believe his style is translating into the professional ranks that well, and the lack of punching power going forwards, in my opinion, will be a problem at featherweight. You've got guys like Josh Warrington, for example, who is basically a non-stop pressure fighter. And although Michael Conlan is awkward and elusive, so he could offset Warrington that way, but I believe the lack of punching power against Warrington would be his undoing. Kid Galahad, very awkward, and he managed to offset Warrington by being awkward, but he still had decent pop on his punches, particularly in that left hand. I don't think Conlan has that type of power that even Galahad possesses. So, a pressure fighter like Warrington might be hard for Michael Conlan to contend with. And as for the other champions, the likes of Leo Santa Cruz and Gary Russell Jr., for me, Michael Conlan wouldn't really have a chance in those fights. So I believe Michael Conlan is quite some way off world level at featherweight. I'm not saying he performed badly against Ruiz. Ultimately, he got the job done and he basically won every single round, and he scored a late stoppage. So he did what he had to do, but I just didn't see anything there that indicates he's a world level fighter. In the first half of the fight in particular, it was very low output, and Michael Conlan was kind of struggling with how negative his opponent was. Michael Conlan was throwing feints, expecting Ruiz to bite, but when he didn't bite, Conlan didn't really have an answer on how to open Ruiz up. It was only in the second half of the fight when Ruiz got a little bit more ambitious, and that was when Conlan started to find the target on a more regular basis with power shots. And the finish was actually quite nice. He knocked Ruiz down with a sweeping right hand out of a southpaw stance. Ruiz did beat the count, but Michael Conlan jumped all over him and landed a barrage of punches, and the referee waved the fight off. Good finish for Michael Conlan, a lovely shot to drop Ruiz. So, there were some good positive things about his performance, but all I'm saying is, in comparison to the hype that Michael Conlan is getting, I'm not really seeing it. I'm not saying he's a bad fighter at all. Obviously, he was a brilliant amateur, and to do what he did in the amateurs, you've got to have a certain level of skill. But, sometimes these world-class amateurs, they don't always translate into great pros. And that's the feeling I get with Michael Conlan. Now, I could be wrong. If Conlan goes on to beat an elite champion at featherweight, I'll hold my hands up and say, yeah, I was wrong. It is what it is. But right now, I've got to be honest, I wouldn't really pick him against the world-level guys at featherweight. Where does he go from here? I mean, just gradual step-ups. They are talking about title fights already at world level. I think they should leave that for another 2 to 3 fights and then reassess from then. But yeah, solid performance from Michael Conlan, but I've got to be honest, I'm not sold. Share your thoughts below. Peace.